Hello, everyone. I'm Stephen Robinson. Welcome to the Play Typer Guy podcast. And joining me today is my friend Emily Taylor from the Hot Feminism newsletter Substack. All the information will be below. Please subscribe. She is delightful. How are you, Emily?
Hanging in there. It's finally getting hot. So we're like
Uh,
it's the hot feminism is happening.
yeah,
It's great for me because I'm a Leo. My birthday's in July,
there
so
we
it's
go.
like once it starts to feel warm, it's like summertime. But I also have nostalgia for Oregon weather because I lived there for 11 years and was in Eugene and was at the University of Oregon. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, clouds and rain and like blue politics. Yay.
um, I wanted to start off because we've been discussing offline essentially a lot that has happened since we last spoke on the podcast with Joe Biden's withdrawal from the race, Kamala Harris's very abbreviated campaign under sort of I have a piece going up this week about kind of the glass cliff. So one of the great examples of the glass cliff, um, because Biden was had been doomed for a while. And now that we're sort of seeing the impacts of this, could you speak to sort of what were your thoughts? Because it felt to me like this slow motion crash and the party was unable to do anything about it or treat it seriously for about years, for almost the entirety of his campaign, because once his
Yeah.
numbers plummeted, it never recovered like in 2021. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's like such a bummer because I am an optimist by nature, but studying the patriarchy, you're like, maybe we could just not do patriarchy. And then it's like, oh, yeah, we're going to keep doing that. Because I think a big part of her electability was because she was a woman. And then, of course, being a Black woman to like really, and so I'm of two minds now. I'm like, oh, well, I guess we can never nominate a woman for president. Like, what can I say that as a women's and gender studies director? But then it also like, I think one of the things that um, people are very, especially white liberals here, are reluctant to do, understandably so, is to call out systems of oppression in communities of color. And I think, I mean, I'm not saying that Harris lost because of the black male vote, but like you can see this drop off in support for women candidates. I think in 2016 we saw it, we see it again, and it's among male voters. So, and I think that's kind of across the demographic spectrum. And I saw that with my students,
Mhm.
white students, students of color. But, I think it's a really complicated issue that we have on our hands of,
Yeah.
how do we
Well,
adjust these?
if it's any consolation to you, I think Biden was tanking with young men of all races of that period.
Yeah.
It was sort of you know uh, and I've written about this kind of because people have talked about can a woman win and so forth. And I think the what I see as a challenge, and obviously as a Black male, but it's like what I call the glass cliff.
Mm-hmm.
So women and minorities, especially women, tend to become the CEO of a company. Okay, well now you're the CEO of the typewriter industries company when typewriter's about to go out of
Yeah.
business, or you're like, and so um, I and I'm very careful in the piece I've written about this to state, obviously misogyny plays a role, obviously, but racism did not just exist and it's not going away.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's hard to make sort of these declarations when, you know, Biden's was incredibly unpopular
Yeah.
and Harris, an abbreviated campaign, she, for many reasons, did not break away from Biden. And you can't really like how can we state that a woman can't win if a woman has to run under the worst circumstances?
Right.
2016 was also bad
Yeah.
because it's very hard to win as the third term. um and what I've seen is sort of 2008 was the Democrats' year. And so
Mm-hmm.
Obama won, but he won where all the fundamentals were in his favor.
Right.
Bush had 29% approval. It was like, and that would be one of the cases where if he had lost, then you could sort of look at the numbers and say, okay, well, were people really unwilling to vote for this Black person? And then, but with Harris, there's so much,
Yeah.
again, not trying to discount her gender, but it's like we were asking her to do the impossible
Yeah. And
based
the
on
and
these numbers.
electability of incumbent vice presidents too is really low. I mean, historically, incumbent vice presidents very rarely win the presidency. So I'm not really sure like what the Democratic Party was doing. I have a lot of questions, and I think it would have been really
I have a
important.
lot of questions.
I just think it would have been really important to have had the primary system, function, and it's highly possible that Harris wouldn't have won the primary, and they had moved South Carolina to be the first state, and I think for important reasons. I mean, I think it was kind of underhanded how they like
Yeah,
bumped South Carolina up, but South Carolina, I think, is an important place because it is the Democratic Party here is multiracial, multi-ethnic, versus in other states where it's mostly white. And so I think it would have been a really important proving ground to have
yeah,
had a Democratic presidential primary.
yeah. I mean, the primary process, if Biden had, you know, looked at the data, if he had people showing and polling, it's like the idea that like you're going to announce for reelection when you're clearly declining, but also he was never like a Reagan figure, right? Whatever you thought of Reagan, Reagan was popular. So he's not looking at this and being like, oh, I've got X amount. He's at like 40% approval
Yeah,
when he announced for reelection.
I know.
And the number one issue against him was you're too old, which, as someone who just had a birthday recently, that just keeps happening.
I know, like we keep aging. I think too, like I've been really thinking about like what this means on the ground for local politics. And I think the bummer for me in South Carolina is that now that Republicans have been in control for like 22 years, um, young people have never seen Democrats be successful at the state level here.
Mhm.
Um, and then with this sort of like, cataclysmic federal loss, I mean, they were already disillusioned with like our mainstream politics. Like young people, especially post pandemic, don't trust anyone really at all. Like they really have lost faith in systems themselves, I think. And so now I'm like, how do we counter like conservative politics and fascism when the Democratic Party in the state, I mean, it's really been re-energized in some interesting ways, but I don't see the young people getting excited about Democrats here. Even people who are liberal, right? Like even the
Mhm.
progressive young people. I mean, obviously I have a small sample size. I haven't talked to everybody in the state, but like how do you like revive a party that just seems like a loser? Like
Well,
to these young
yeah,
people. I'm like, oh no,
but
what do we do?
the Vulcan in me, because it's kind of like not trying to dismiss racism or sexism or all of this. It's just so hard when Harris was kind of, again, the glass cliff, the blame of things that were already kind of happening with the party, especially amongst younger people. So this drop, if you look at it, is specifically targeted toward amongst younger people, so younger men who don't like establishments, don't, certain things that are just sort of, let me see, gender coded, but that kind of connection with the Democratic Party, and I've been warning about this for years, that Black voters had. At a former publication I worked at, when there were polls showing Biden slipping with young Black people, it was dismissed out of hand. I think the guy I worked with said, it's a white liberal. It was like, that's bullshit. It's like, well, I, one, I know Black people beyond me. So as someone who knows Black people other than just myself, I've gone to barbershops, I interviewed people to big salons, and like, yeah, they don't, their connection to the party is different than their grandparents who are aware of the civil rights movement and the connection to the party and the things the party has done. So that's sort of shifted. And, when we talk about the Democrats' year, that was 2020, though COVID had a lot to do with it. I think
Yeah.
the Biden the Biden candidacy itself was sort of Trump is bad. I
Right.
don't that would not have been compelling. I think we've seen it wasn't compelling in 2016, it wasn't compelling in 2024, not because women were arguing it. I think it wasn't compelling. It To the extent that it was compelling in 2020, it was because Trump was bungling COVID. People didn't
Right.
like the conditions on the ground. He took it out on the incumbent. And that lesson, I think, specifically Biden didn't really take from it.
Hmm.
So but 2020 was the year. So let's say Harris or any number of women who were running, if they gotten a nomination, I think they were more likely to win. That was a Democrat's year to win. But
Right.
I mean, I guess that's what I would ask you, because that's the toughest thing, right? Because it's like, when 2028 will be the same example, right? Okay, well, this is most likely going to be our year, right?
Hmm.
But will a woman even get through the primary process? Because so that's why I'm very pushed back on, especially on the liberals who are like, maybe maybe it's not safe to nominate a woman. It's like, well, every time you do that, it's the time where a woman is most likely to win. So what do
Right.
you think?
Right. Just being afraid to take that risk. And yeah, and I think, I mean, my money right now is on somebody like Andy Bashir from Kentucky. Like, I think that if we had a Southerner run, I think that that could be a way to get the middle, maybe,
Yeah,
potentially. Plus, he's pretty great, I think.
yeah.
And, having somebody who like I think he's doing a good job of speaking across class lines, and I think that's been the thing that's been the most interesting to watch here is to watch people like consistently vote against their own class interests by choosing the Republican Party. Like right now, the Republicans in the state legislature, like it's sort of astounding to watch, but like they've been all gung ho on their mission to eliminate the state income tax.
Hmm.
And I'm like, the federal money, like if y'all pass this bill, we're going to lose all this federal money. Like we're the fifth we're the fifth highest state in receiving federal tax dollars in the country, right? So a
Hmm.
massive infusion of federal money is just going to dry up, right? Like
Yeah.
the school district my kids go to, Greenville County, they get $20 million of federal money a month. And so the state's like, nah, let's just get rid of the income
Yeah.
tax. And it's already very low, right? And they want to shift. Right now, their plan is like a flat tax approach. So they're trying to shift. Right now, the richest people in South Carolina pay 6%, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
like, it's like no money to them, right? And they want to shift it down to 4% and then make everybody who makes under 30,000 start paying a flat tax. And it's like it's like astounding to me to watch
Yeah.
people who are poor and middle class in the state just cheer
Oh
this
yeah.
anti-tax sentiment. And I'm like, I mean, at some point, like, I'm like, where does it end? Like, do we just have no taxes?
Well,
Like,
most likely,
I don't know.
but I do think, to your question, again, having grown up in the South, grown up in working class, knowing working class people of all races, something I've always warned Democrats, something I tell to my more liberal friends and the Sanders and kind of Warren ring, the biggest capitalists in this country are broke ass people
Yeah,
or poor people,
yeah.
Americans. It is such a core thing. We just have to understand that about Americans. They see, and when I think this is I'm interested in your thoughts on this. When we come to them and sort of like, here's how rich people are screwing you, and I think there's a degree to that they will get, but ultimately, I think they resent the idea that you're telling them that they're a fixed class, because it's kind of like the American dream is, I'm going to work hard and either I will be wealthy or well off or my kids will, and that sort of
Mhm.
entrepreneurship appeals to them. No one likes paying taxes. Since that we might agree or disagree with this, do you think it's just a communication issue amongst Democrats, their ability to sort of connect with people who should be our base of the party?
I mean, I don't think that they have actually like I mean, I think the National Democratic Party has been really, like we saw in 2016, it's been taken over by neoliberalism, you know, um,
Mhm.
which explained, the outsider status of Sanders, who I think did have the opportunity to appeal to working class
Mhm.
folks, so I think I don't think that the Democratic Party has actually cared about the working class in a real way. Like partially it's like who the National Democratic Party is, right? Like it is actually run by elites and a lot of money. And so it does feel a little bit like sometimes they're cosplaying a concern for class issues. And then I think that, right, what you're talking about people adopting capitalist ideology, like it wouldn't then matter what the messaging was, right? Like if you have accepted, and one thing I've always noticed about the South that I always saw when I, came down here to visit relatives, and then when I moved here in 2012, is that as soon as like kind of like, I mean, it's really kind of scary, but it kind of cracks me up. Like as soon as someone has money in the South, they're granted authority. Like it's like, oh well, they are rich, so like they can do what they want. And I'm like, but they're doing awful things. They're like breaking the law, and they're like, but they have a pool and they wear nice clothes and drive fancy cars, so they can just like do whatever they, like I don't know if you've seen that too. Like as soon as
Oh
you, and
yeah.
that's why you see in the South this concern with appearances, like that you don't see in the Northwest, right? Like how people are dressing, how their houses look, what kind of cars they're driving, right? Like it's this class anxiety. It's like you want to pretend that you're the richest that you can possibly pretend to be, so that it seems like you have like human value or that you're aligned with authority. So I think it's really difficult for people in the South to separate like the people being rich from people being right. And that's
Mhm.
really, I think, really difficult to make the case, right? That you should criticize rich people, that you should tax the rich, right? Like I'm like, why why does it seem like, why is everybody excited about lowering the richest South Carolinians, tax bracket? Like this doesn't make any sense in terms of state revenue. Um, but it does make sense if you understand that people um, don't have, I don't think a lot of people in the state have a democratic mindset, right? Like they don't, like, one, because the society has never been a fully functional representative democracy, so people have never seen it actually work, right? Like so there's that history to it, but then it just, like, sometimes it just feels like this echo of the plantocracy is still here, right? Like it's
Mhm.
like like people can't imagine living in a society that is, you know based on equal representation and about people paying their fair share of, what they owe to a society, right? It's like just not a sense of like a social fabric.
I mean, you talked about the state party getting hammered, here, but a state, Democratic state parties in a lot of places are getting hammered. Where are our sort of quote unquote normal candidates? The people who the the good version of Lauren Boebert, right? Like a single mom who's was working doesn't have necessarily have a college degree, is working a job and now wants to serve the nation. Where are they within the Democratic Party, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been interesting in South Carolina, because I've thought about this and I'm like, are Democrats just going to lose forever? Like, what do we do? But there isn't actually, like, I think we just have to like make our peace with reviving it at the state level, because there isn't any kind of machinery in place that can do anything progressive, or like there's no other option, right? Like I mean, it's floundering, but we have to like get invested with it. And so I think the state level people, in terms of like helping people learn how to be an elected representative, like there are groups in South Carolina, like Emerge SC, and then there's a really great political advocacy group called the Women's Rights and Empowerment Network, that have been pushing good legislation through at the state level. And so at the state level, I think we have to keep working on like reinventing the Democratic Party to the extent we can, as much as that's hindered, I think, by the National Party in some ways. But then I think independence, like I think people, like it's been interesting to watch, the Nebraskan independent who ran for the House, like barely lost to Don Bacon. So there could be like independent coalitions maybe within the Democratic Party that could help. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's so hard too because I think there's a lot of like real structural problems. Like you're seeing how Mike Johnson won't let people vote remotely, even people who have children, right? So like moms are in such a like terrible place, and then they can't even like get leave if they're in Congress. So like, why would they ever run? So like the people like I think getting more women into all levels of government would potentially be a solution, minus a few people like Jody Ernst, who like maybe just
Largely agree. Well, I mean, that's the sort of.
I mean, you can't like, yeah, obviously like Marsha Blackburn, like some, they like to be patriarchally identified, and then
Well,
what do you do?
yeah, it's sort of, you're kind of talking within the Democratic Party. Let's sort of be honest. We don't, because Marjorie Greene, there are women similar with like Brian Donalds. I don't question his blackness. I would choose the whitest of white people over him. Um,
This is
and
why you cannot essentialize identity, right? Like, I mean, this is like there's so many good lessons. Like, you can't just be like, women are going to be more caring politicians. No,
no, there's
like,
no evidence of that. I want diversity of diverse backgrounds, and I think diverse backgrounds can be within ideology. So more women, more moms, more stuff is great,
yeah,
but that's not. It's reductive to say that that's going to lead. Oh, there'll be no wars, and I've seen that.
right.
I've seen some folks, liberals, will say this. It'll be like, if women were running the country, there'd be no wars. Okay, well, that's not
Well,
inherently.
that's
You know,
Margaret Thatcher.
I've had bad bosses. We've had stuff like. I do want to ask you about this because I had interviewed Lindsey Boland a few weeks ago. She was one of the women who had come forward against um, Andrew Cuomo in New York, and so if Andrew Cuomo, a sexual predator, objectively speaking, is the mayor of New York City, what possible feminist argument does the Democratic Party have against Trumpism or anything?
Yeah,
Like, I mean, what's going on, and what are your thoughts on this?
yeah, it's a shame. Like this should be the moment where Democrats like maybe stand up and like are courageous, because like what do you have to lose? Like you're already losing. You might as well like be on the right side of history. I think one thing that's been interesting to me about people being documented sexual predators and getting elected, somebody said to me, I forgot who it was, but they were like, you know I can't believe we have our first rapist president. And I was like, pretty sure he is not the first one, right? Like, I'm like, it's a lot of men, like, good chances. And maybe some good historical documentation that this is not the first rapist to be elected president. So, like, like I, I don't think that the Democrats have, you know, they also, just like they're not a anti-capitalist party, they're not really a feminist party, right? Like you know, just historically they haven't been, obviously, and they're trying in certain ways with like with some threads, but like to actually push out people in the party who are known sexual predators, like we're not seeing that happen, like it's
Well,
so
and Republicans weaponize this. They weaponize hypocrisy because it's very understandable for people. And
right.
so, if you weaponize hypocrisy, if you weaponize um, kind of sort of a corruption of government, so that people just say things to get elected and do things, and it you do get this sort of anti-establishment. Everyone's a crook. Which, of course, once you get to everyone's a crook, then that helps someone like Trump come into office, it's like, oh, everyone's a crook, everyone's corrupt.
Right. If you elect a rapist, you elect someone who's going to abuse power, right? Like,
Yeah,
and that's
that seems
like,
illogical. Yeah.
there you go. Like, this is, and so I think that for me, like, it also comes down to sometimes I've been telling my husband I'm going to get a framed picture of Cassandra for the office. Like people, like we've been saying, like feminists say this is going to happen if you do this, and then like nobody listens. I mean, maybe some people listen, but there isn't this people are not listening. And so I think that it, like, for me, like when I've been looking at people's reactions at the state level and how people are organizing, like right now it seems like it's a majority of like retired white women who are like leading the charge, which like I really feel like it is very strategic and smart for people of color right now to not be in visible positions to push back against power, especially in a state like South Carolina where there's not much protection. Like I think that there's a lot of resistance going on that's not visible, but like when I'm thinking about like the parades that are going on, like the demonstrations in Greenville, like it's majority white and it's a lot of women. There's some men, but I'm like, partially when we talk about like changes at the party level and not supporting sexual predators and like supporting reproductive justice, like until we do have women who occupy the same number of positions of power, like people are like, how do we make change? And I'm like, white men need to care, like they need to understand that like electing rapists means people will break the law and abuse power, and that electing rapists isn't just about the past harms or the future harms to girls and women or to children or to people, but it's also about the harms to the system. So if you elect somebody that doesn't have that respect of others, right, then you're going to have these same problems with the political machine, right? And so I don't know like what it'll take for white men to like care in a real way, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you're not going to see like white Democratic men be like, I don't care about rape, like, yay, rape, like you're not going to see them be honest about it, right?
Mhm.
But they've lived their whole lives growing up in a rape culture. And so maybe
Well,
it's just like
yeah.
so normalized to them that I don't know, that they don't
I,
see it as a problem.
well, a lot of that got weaponized as well, of which too many white women or women across our gender seem to have absorbed as well, which is that innocent people are going to be targeted and everything's going to be the crucible. And the with Cuomo was very disturbing because what I've seen most, especially because Republicans aren't yet weighing in, they're sort of pointing and laughing, is that it's from a lot of center left women who are saying that Cuomo was targeted by progressives, by the left, and it was all a target to take him out, and it was all political. Um, and that was that was disturbing to me. Also because I don't want to sound I want to try to avoid stereotypes here, but Cuomo's a scumbag.
I know. I'm like, isn't
Like,
don't we, aren't we all on that page yet? Like,
well, we talk about Eddie Bashir, like he's someone who, you're like, he seems like he presents as such a nice guy. I could see anyone, you or me or anyone, especially if you've known him and only in the nice capacity, to be like, oh, come on, this must be something's going on. This doesn't seem right. But like, I feel like that's where art does not imitate life, because both with Cuomo and Trump, it's like they're not high, they like scumbags. This is not like, like the whole thing with Ted Bundy. It was like, oh, like he's very charming. That's how he got people into the car. But like, what you, I don't, why are you getting in the car with Cuomo?
I
Like,
know,
you're
like
not.
yeah, like it seems like they're very clearly broadcasting all of that. Like with Pete Hegseth, like, oh yeah, like you're a drunk, predator,
um,
right? Like, oh, um, yeah. So I mean, and then like women across the spectrum, like are really doing a disservice to across the political spectrum are doing a disservice to survivors, right? Like what Mace is doing here, like, oh my, like talk about like the biggest hot mess with her rape accusations against like her ex-fiance and like all this stuff, and it is like it is like it feels like the boy who cried wolf, and it's really discrediting like actual like people testifying about their own, like just the fact that she's trying to weaponize being a rape victim, which I think she was in the past, right? Like now she's trying to like revive that identity as a political tool, and I'm like,
Yeah.
could you do anything worse for people who are like still trying to survive, you
Yeah.
know, these things? It's just, I mean, I do think that people are really fed up with her. Like she doesn't seem to have any like state level Republican establishment support for a variety of reasons, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, she'd have to be successfully primaried, right?
Yeah.
Because she's in a racial gerrymander. But I mean, Trump was not able to get rid of her. And so I don't know. Maybe next time, maybe this year will be the one. If there's like we're
There's
gonna
rumors
run
she's going to
someone
run for
normal.
governor. So
Dear
that
God.
I am like, please no, like just not that. Pamela Eva is the lieutenant governor, and she probably would stand a better shot. But we'll see what happens with the primary. Some good potential Democratic contenders: Jermaine Johnson, who's a state rep, is doing an exploratory run. So like, you know, fingers crossed we get some at the state level. Like if we can get people to vote, like state level offices could be more purple, maybe, if people vote.
Everything's gotten so nationalized. So the idea is there was a chance where in a certain a more conservative state, a Democrat could win. But now it's sort of like the expectations that you sort of would have to meet whatever the national party standard is. But then the question becomes, almost in a transactional sense, what are the things that you have to be to then win, rather than sort of be authentic? So sort of like, okay, well, if you're going to win in this purple state, you've got to like be anti-trans in some way, or or anti-abortion or something. Do you see any truth to that? Or, because there's different arguments. There's that one, and then there's the sort of the one Sanders has often made, which is just like, if you just believe in it strongly enough, you can, be AOC and win in South Carolina. I tend not to believe either one, so that's why I'm throwing to you. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think is more realistic, or is it a combination of the two, or something?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year. Like some like Greenville City as a municipality is blue. Like we voted for Harris. I'm like, oh, yeah. I mean, Greenville, but the Greenville city lines are fairly small compared to the county, which is a lot more red. So there's blue dots, and like at the municipal level, I think we can be successful because of how those lines are drawn. The state level is so gerrymandered with the state level districts that there might be some movement in some places, but like I'm not very optimistic that we're going to see. We might be able to right now. The South Carolina legislature is a Republican supermajority. We lost the like small ability to counter some things with this last year's election, so we might be able to claw back the supermajority. I don't think a Democrat's going to win the governorship, but I think it depends on how bad things get, right? Like what's been interesting to me is like people seem to, I mean, there's people who are really politically involved, there are progressive networks that are really lighting up in the state, and that's been really encouraging. But it seems like we have a really long way to go to build up to a place where we can be more successful. I'm encouraged that the Democratic National Party is proposing to direct money back to states finally. So I'm hoping we can take advantage of some of that. But I think if there isn't a major crisis, like until people start really suffering, I don't know that we're going to see much movement, right? Because that capitalist ideology, like if things hold relatively okay, right? I don't think people are going to make different political choices if they
Mm.
don't see a substantial material impact, right? Like there are some people who are seeing it, right? Like I have friends who have lost grants and, there are things that are coming through, but I think until schools like have to go to 4 days a week or, like until we see like really substantial material suffering, I don't know that people are gonna feel motivated enough to participate in political systems in the way that they should, like especially combined with like literacy and civics education and like like people just aren't reading, they don't really know what's going on, and then when things are really awful like with the Trump administration, what they're doing, I think people's instinct is to look away and to try to just keep living the life that you have, and until that life is significantly altered, I don't know how much people are going to move on these things, right? Like, I don't see young people getting excited about 2026. Like I don't. It's like I don't know. I mean, it's like the most pessimistic I've been, I think.
No,
But
no,
um,
you're telling it straight. Do you want to go out on a positive note? You don't have to, but is there a positive note that you would give to folks before we go?
um, I think I am encouraged by like what people are trying to do. Like it is, we have like I think one thing that's really important is like this, and this is like one of my main themes in the newsletter, is that it's really important for people who don't live in a red state, like don't assume that we're somehow homogenous, right? Like even though people are in voting minorities, even though we live in a state that doesn't protect trans people or support them, right, there are organizations like nonprofits and private organizations and people who are doing the best they can, right, to help other people at the local level, and I think that's what gives me the most hope, right? Like Ashlyn Ashlyn Pro, who is the director of the Palmetto State Abortion Fund. She's been, her and her co-founder have been running it with their board as like an all volunteer abortion fund in the state, right? Like they've just been giving their own time to help all these people who are trying to seek, care. So I think what gives me hope is like what people are doing to try to revive the Democratic Party in the state, what people are doing to try to, like, when we see these government roadblocks get thrown up, like defunding all of biomedical science and things like that. Like when we see these roadblocks go up, I think what gives me hope is that people are like rivers and they go around it, right? And they try to keep people here are still committed to trying to help other people, and that is something that is Southern. The government's never done a very good job, I think, of providing a social safety net in the South, and I believe that the government can do that, right? But in the absence of that, people have a long history of taking care of their communities, taking care of their families, and I think that like ingenuity gives me hope.
Great.
Right, like that we
Well,
can reinvent the system, we can take care of each other, and if we can infuse our politics with that sentiment of care, that's I think where we have the best chance.
well, thank you, Emily, on the wonderful river metaphor. That was very good. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And Emily Taylor, always thank you for joining. Go check out the Hot Feminism Substack, linked all in this. And we'll catch you next time. Take
Thanks,
care.
Steven.